Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Moving Markets. Glad to have you here. My name is Jeffry Dunyon, owner and founder of Safe Option Strategies. I run a nice little. This episode, of course, is brought to you by Safe Option Strategies because it's my company. I run a nice little investment education business. Shout out to all my followers that are a part of Safe Option Strategies. This webcast, this YouTube live is for everybody. It's free of charge. If you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know, and I'll ignore your comments. But I'm just kidding. But I'm glad to have you here. I like to take 15, 20 minutes each day, maybe 25 minutes at the most, talk a little bit about what is moving the markets. I believe there's a benefit from knowing what types of things cause the markets to move, because it gives you an ability to be a little bit better prepared for it. The challenge is that no matter what is going on, we're talking about data, and data is historical. There's no such thing as data that is upcoming. We know numbers are coming up. Let me make sure I clarify that. We know that there are numbers coming up, but once we know the numbers, they're historical numbers. We're guessing. When we're talking about numbers in the future, we're only guessing. So we try and shed a little light and shed a little clarity on why the markets are moving the way they're moving. We try and do it in a fun, entertaining way. And we, of course, mix in some politics for two reasons. Number one, I'm a political news junkie. I have strong opinions on things. And if you like my opinions, you're going to listen to me. And if you don't like my opinions, you're going to listen and complain about me. And either one is okay. I don't mind. But number two is it's almost impossible nowadays to separate politics from the market. Things that happen politically in this country have an effect on the stock market. And you can't be in the market and have your head buried in the sand. And too many people have done that for too many years. And then they wonder why their broker has lost money for them. They wonder why they're not as successful in the market. They wonder why their own trades and the stuff that they're doing themselves is not as effective for them as what they think it should be. And yet they're not paying attention to things they've got to learn to pay attention to. And you have to pay attention to what's going on in this country politically. You can't ignore it. So we mix in some politics. I know I have some pretty strong conservative opinions. I don't mind calling out conservative people and Republicans when I think they're dead flat wrong. And I don't mind giving credit to liberals and Democrats and independents when I think they're right. So you'll have no doubt, if you've listened to a few of the episodes, if you want to start listening from this point forward, there's not going to be any doubt in your mind where my politics are. But I'm one of these people that I'm okay if you disagree with me. We can respectfully disagree with each other and politely disagree with each other. And I think there needs to be more discourse in this country, especially where we have different opinions. We bring those different opinions to the table, and we're okay with those different opinions. They don't have to be something that turns into ad hominem attacks. They don't have to be something that turns into untoward conversation. And every once in a while, we're going to mix in some sports because it goes hand in hand with politics. And today I am going to mix in some sports because of some things that happened last week that I didn't get a comment on very much. I purposely wore, I got to sit up a little bit. See, I wore my Utah Jazz season ticket holder shirt. This is from last year. This isn't this year's shirts for season ticket holders, but I'm a season ticket holder for the Utah Jazz, and I love that organization. I'm going to talk a little bit about something that happened politically that made national news. I'll save that for the end of the presentation. All right. So right now it's 9:43 Mountain Time. That's the time zone I'm in. That means it's 11:43 on the East Coast. That means the U.S. stock market has been open for almost 2 hours and 15 minutes right now as we speak. The Dow Jones started to the downside. Again, it is being dragged down today primarily by Boeing. Now, I say again because that's what happened all last week. If you were to look at a stock chart for the Dow Jones Industrial Average for last week, and I can't put it on the screen here for you, but I've got it on the screen next to me. If we look at that chart, we saw 4 of the 5 trading days last week that the Dow was up. One of those days it was up dramatically, and the only day that it was up dramatically, Boeing was up. But Boeing was down those first 4 days of last week, including the one day that the Dow traded negative, which was Monday of last week. And Boeing had a major drag on the market last week. Boeing, in terms of, it had a major impact on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And we talked about it every day that we did a presentation last week. So I'm not going to go into it a lot right now. Boeing may have some trouble still ahead of it. The latest news that came over the weekend or that was announced this morning is that Boeing, the FAA has launched a probe into some of Boeing's safety reporting and safety monitoring. There is news that maybe Boeing had the ability to self-monitor some certain safety protocols that normally would be handled and done by the FAA or by some outside outside organization that monitors safety. That is of concern to people, and the fact that it was a concern enough for the FAA to launch a probe, that's more bad news for Boeing. So you've got Boeing sort of leading the way down. Now, the Dow spent the very early minutes of the market, the first 15, 20 minutes of the market were in the red for the Dow, although the NASDAQ and S&P were to the upside. About 30 minutes ago, everything tipped on its head. The Dow went deep into, when I say deep into negative, for the day, the Dow went down and touched its low of the days, being down about 60 points. And it's come back and is only down 40 points right now. But it actually, the NASDAQ and the S&P briefly went into negative territory. They've both come back into positive territory. And the only news that took place during, between the Dow being up and the sudden reversal and the sudden move to the downside was some information about housing and then some numbers on housing and housing ownership came in exactly the same for January that it had been for December. And we just got the report on those numbers. Now, I personally don't think that's bad news, but the headline that I read was that in spite of mortgage rates dropping, this is where you get the negative in the headline. Home builder sentiment holds steady despite a decline in mortgage rates. So there's the assumption, and I don't think this is a wrong assumption. There's the assumption that if mortgage rates are going down, home builder sentiment should go up. Give it some time to, all I would say is give it some time to catch up. At least home builder sentiment did not continue to go down. That would have been a real bad thing. But that's the only piece of news that took place in that last 30 minutes that really dropped things. The one other little byline sort of headline, Warren Buffett says there's enormous resistance to change as Haven looks to revamp healthcare. So Haven is this project that Warren Buffett is in with Jeff Bezos and Jamie Dimon, the CEOs respectively of Amazon and JP Morgan. Haven is this new healthcare insurance type of thing that they're trying to put together. And I guess I have not read the article, but my guess is that it is struggling to get off the ground because, as Warren Buffett says, people are resistant to change. His quote was, "There's enormous resistance to change while a similar acknowledgement that change will be needed. And of course, if the private sector doesn't supply that over a period of time, people will say we give up. We've got to turn this over to the government, which is going to be even worse." So here you have Warren Buffett in a roundabout way. He's reiterating something that we've said on this presentation and something that we say often, and that is that universal healthcare is going to be disastrous for this country. Single payer healthcare, government run healthcare would be disastrous for this country, even though the liberals are piling on to this notion and want socialized medicine. You've got Warren Buffett, who has not been an enemy of liberals. In fact, when it comes to tax policy, he's been more on the left side than on the right side. And I mean right, both in the sense of right wing as well as being correct. I want you to know I mean those two things synonymously. He's not been on the right side of the argument of taxes for quite some time, but he's absolutely on the right side when it comes to healthcare. The private sector has got to fix healthcare. If you try and get the government to do it, they're going to screw it up. I will maintain, I've said this before, I'm going to maintain there is nothing that the government has proved to do more efficiently than the private sector ever in the history of this government. So the notion that the government can do something better than we can is ludicrous. It's absolutely absurd. And Warren Buffett he's getting in that arena and getting on that bandwagon. I don't trade as a general rule. I don't trade healthcare. I shouldn't say as a general rule. I should say historically, I have not traded healthcare stocks. I'm following Cardinal Health right now. And because they're very large components of the Dow, I follow United Health and kind of pay attention to what they are doing. And because they're a newer member of the Dow, I do in fact follow and keep an eye on Walgreens, and I include Walgreens, even though they're a retailer. They're getting into the healthcare arena with more and more services being provided at Walgreens, more and more of the walk-in clinic type stuff being provided, and I think that is going to be a wave of the future. And I sincerely hope that it is the private sector that continues to lead the way on this. A company like Cardinal Health, ticker symbol CAH. They're on my watch list now. They haven't been in the past. They're down a little bit today, down about 1%. And I'm sure that's on some of the comments that Buffett has made. But I wonder where they've been as their high of the day. Cardinal Health for their high. They were actually quite a bit higher early in the trading session than what they've been. They've been in negative territory all day today, but took another dip strong when Buffett made those comments. So from a political standpoint, there wasn't a lot of earth-shattering news over the weekend. The news on John McCain and the little Twitter battle, the little Twitter battle going on between John McCain's daughter, Meghan McCain. She's a popular, I don't know that you would call her a news anchor. She's an opinion person. She used to be with Fox News, and then she moved over to The View. She's considered to be one of only a couple of voices that are sometimes more conservative on The View. Although she's got a handful of issues that she's not conservative at all on. I think she's a rhino like her dad was. John McCain, for the last decade or so of his political career, was anything but a Republican. He was a Republican in name only. That's what a rhino is, for those of you that don't know that. John McCain disappointed true conservatives and true Republicans time and time again. When he fought George Bush over certain things, when he fought Donald Trump over things, and when he sided with Barack Obama on some things that no true Republican would side with him on. Now, I don't have a problem with Meghan McCain loving her father and wanting to defend her father at all costs. But the news that broke over the weekend, I think it broke late last week, that John McCain, after definitively saying that he did not leak information about the Steele dossier to the FBI and to some media outlets. Congressional testimony that was released proves that to be absolutely wrong. John McCain lied about it. There's no question. That shouldn't come as a shock to anybody. Politicians lie. It's part of what politicians do. They say what they know people want to hear. They say what's going to score them most political points at any given point in time. And no one should be surprised that John McCain did that to try and stick it to Donald Trump. He was pissed off over comments that Trump made during Trump's election, during the primaries. And look, I don't like what Trump said about John McCain. I don't like that he made some disparaging comments about John McCain's service, about John McCain being a POW. I don't like that Trump did that. I think Trump was wrong to make those comments. I think John McCain showed that he is a very petty, very little man when he used that as a reason to go against everything that he claimed to stand for by being a member of the Republican Party. So I'm not excusing what Donald Trump said or did, but when someone says something about you and your way of, you prove that you are not the bigger man by turning the cheek, by saying, okay, I wish he hadn't said that, but that's not who I am, or that's not what I stand for. And John McCain did exactly the opposite. John McCain showed that he is a petty little man and a weak politician. Look, I never met the man personally. I'm not saying this to be mean to his family. I'm not saying this to dishonor the man. I respect and appreciate John McCain's service. I wish he had not had to go through what he went through in the Vietnam War, being a POW for a lot of years. I think what he did in not accepting an early release from a prisoner of war camp in Hanoi, Vietnam, because he had a father who I believe was a politician or had some status in the country. John McCain was offered an early release because of who he was and who his parents were. And he turned that down. He said, it's not fair that other soldiers would have to stay here and that I would be released. I think that's incredible. I get choked up when I think about John McCain doing that. I have nothing against John McCain as an individual. I have nothing but respect for what he did for his country back during the war as a soldier. I absolutely detest career politicians for either party for any reason. I do not think being a politician should be a career in this country. And the fact that it is one of the biggest problems that needs to be fixed in our democracy is career politicians. And when you hear this argument that you're more effective in working for your constituents the longer you're back there, folks, the only people saying that are the politicians that want to stay back there and stay in power. No one else believes that. No one else thinks that's the case. We could fix a lot of the problems in this country if we had strict term limits on politics. And so I never appreciated or respected the fact that John McCain made a career off of politics. To my knowledge, John McCain never did anything for this country that wasn't paid for by taxpayers. He never contributed to the private sector in any way, shape, or form during his entire life in this country. Okay, I'm not saying this to beat up on John McCain. I'm pointing out that he is a shining example of one of the things that is wrong with our political system and the fact that you can be a career politician. He's not the only one. I don't like any career politician. I am of the opinion very strongly, and this would fix a lot of things in our country, that at a federal level, I don't care what you've done in your community or you've done at the state level, once you accept a nomination and an election victory on the federal level, meaning you are going to be a congressman or a congresswoman for your state at the federal level, you're going to be a senator for your state at the federal level, or you're going to be the president of the United States. Those are the three positions. Once you have been elected to one of those three positions, the clock is ticking and you have 12 more years to be in politics, period. End of story. If you serve 2 terms as a senator, you never are allowed in a federal political position of any kind ever again, including federal appointed positions. In other words, once you've had 12 years in Washington, D.C., you leave Washington, D.C., and you are never allowed to return again in any lobbying position, in any elected position, in any appointed position. You should be completely removed from and completely done with politics, and there should never be an exception made to that. Folks, career politicians have ruined our political system because when people get elected to a federal political position, their number one goal for the remainder of their time back there is to get reelected. That is their number one goal. It's a shame that only the presidency of the United States has a term limit and they can only serve for 8 years. I think no politician in any federal position should be able to serve for 12 years. Fix that and you start fixing a lot of things that are broken in this country because you're going to have a limit on time to get things done and it's not going to be all about political power. I think you also 100% take away any retirement, any pension, any benefits beyond the duration of that service. You want to get a retirement, work in the private sector. You want to get health care, work in the private sector or buy it yourself. Don't get something different for our politicians than what the rest of us have available to us. Okay, anyway, enough said on that. That was some political news over the weekend. It's not really affecting the markets. I just wanted to share my opinion on that. I want to take a couple of minutes and talk about what happened with the Utah Jazz, with Russell Westbrook and with a Utah Jazz fan and with Gail Miller, the owner of the Utah Jazz. So last week, Monday, this goes back a week ago, one of the fans in the stadium made some very inappropriate, very disparaging comments towards Russell Westbrook, the star point guard for the Oklahoma City Thunder. That fan lost his season tickets and was banned for life from that arena. Okay. I have no problem with that. I think that was the right thing to do. Based on what I have heard this fan said, it was completely inexcusable. It was completely inappropriate. And I have no problem with what the punishment was. Here's where I have a big problem. I know those comments were very disparaging to Russell Westbrook. They were racist in nature, that there's no excuse for that. There's what the fan did was inexcusable. I have no problem with the punishment that was meted out to this fan for what happened. Russell Westbrook dropped multiple F-bombs at the fan and at his wife, said some very disparaging things to this fan and his wife that were caught on videotape that the whole world has been able to see. And Russell Westbrook was given a $25,000 fine from the NBA. Folks, the double standard is sickening to me, and it should be sickening to you. I don't agree with what this fan did, but if Russell Westbrook, who is being paid millions of dollars a year to play professional basketball, cannot control his temper and cannot hold in check what he says, I don't care who provoked it. It's not about who provoked it. If you're that easily provoked, you need to get into a different profession. If you're so easily provoked that you can't handle a fan saying some negative things to you, and I know they were pretty awful things that this fan said, but if you are so easily provoked that you're going to threaten to come into the stands and take care of that effing man and his effing wife, and I at one point in time, it sounded like he said, I'm going to effing kill you. I think he said, I'm going to get you. But whatever it was, Russell Westbrook, at a bare minimum, an absolute bare minimum, should be banned from life from ever entering that arena again. And that should be something the NBA does. Russell Westbrook should never be allowed to play in that arena again for having said what he said. I don't think it would be excessive to say you ban him for the rest of the season and you send a message to every professional athlete in the NBA, and you send a message to every professional athlete that whatever the fans say or do, you're the one getting paid to be there. You're the one making millions of dollars. You better learn a way to check yourself and not go after him, and not go after him in that way, and not say those kind of things. And a $25,000 fine, folks, that fan that lost his season seats and doesn't get a refund on him, I don't believe, and he cannot go there for life. You look at that from a monetary perspective. And again, I think it's appropriate what happened to him. You look at that from a monetary perspective, and Russell Westbrook getting a $25,000 fine is like that fan getting hit for a $100 speeding ticket. It is very disproportionate. It is a double standard. It is absolutely unequivocally wrong. What minimal, pathetic, weak punishment. And it tells me that the NBA and the organization, the management there, from Silver all the way down, absolutely spineless cowards. They are pathetic. They are weak. I have lost so much respect for the NBA in light of the weak, pathetic response they had to what Russell Westbrook did. And I would say it for any player on any team, that type of interaction with a fan where those kind of things are said, the punishment needs to be far more severe. Folks, I'm 22 minutes into the presentation. I'm going to end right there. Hope to see you back tomorrow. I'm still a Jazz fan. I think what Gail Miller did was right spot on. I think she was very dignified. I think what some of the other players did in showing some solidarity and saying we've got to come together and racism has no place, I agree with all of that, and I love that. Russell Westbrook, in my opinion, ought to be unemployed today. And the fact that he's not says that the NBA brass are cowards, plain and simple. I defy them to justify and defend their position. If anyone from the NBA organization hears this podcast, this YouTube live, and they want to be a guest on my show, I will give them the ability to defend their position. It is indefensible. They are cowards, plain and simple. I'm going to leave it right there. Thanks everyone for joining me. Bye-bye.